Hi, my name is Alina Santana. I'm 26 years old, and I'm the kind of person who quietly builds until I explode. This story? It's a slow burn filled with betrayal, deception, humiliation. And of course, revenge served flaming hot. Let me ask you, what would you do if your own parents went behind your back, moved a complete stranger into your house, and insisted he was meant to be your husband? Yeah, you heard that correctly. My parents moved their hand-selected future son-in-law into my house, without checking whose damn name was on the deed. Ever felt like your family saw you more as a pawn than a person? Then buckle up. This tale's for you. Have you ever been betrayed by your own family like this? Let me know in the comments. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're here for justice stories. We expose everything here. You know, it's funny how some of the biggest lessons in life come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. For me, that package looked a lot like a cozy 3-bedroom house in Charlotte, North Carolina. I bought it when I was 24, and every single dime that went into that down payment, every monthly mortgage payment since, came from my own sweat and hustle. See, I wasn't just working one job in college. I was juggling 2 remote positions. While my friends were out partying, I was coding, writing, building. I lived on instant noodles and ambition. Most people my age were still figuring out their first apartment. I was meticulously saving, researching, and dreaming of a place that was truly mine, a sanctuary, a statement of my independence. I didn't broadcast my success. I've always been the type to move quietly, to achieve without fanfare. My home was my personal triumph, a testament to years of dedication. It was a space where I could finally breathe, where I could be entirely myself without any lingering expectations. It had a small garden I loved, a perfect bay window, and a kitchen I dreamed of filling with the aroma of my grandmother's cooking eventually. My parents, Maria and Hector, knew I was working hard, of course. They'd ask, "How are your studies, Mija? Are you eating well?" But they didn't grasp the extent of my financial independence, nor my quiet determination. And honestly, I preferred it that way. It was my secret, my power. Looking back, maybe I should have kept it that way. The moment I made the mistake, the colossal error that set this entire, dramatic chain of events in motion was telling them. I remember the phone call, bubbling with pride, picturing their beaming faces. "Mom, Dad," I'd said, "I bought a house." Their initial reaction was joy, a flurry of congratulations. But beneath that immediate happiness, something shifted. A tiny, almost imperceptible gleam appeared in their eyes. A strategic calculation, perhaps? I didn't see it then. I just saw proud parents. Little did I know, by opening the doors to my achievement, I was unknowingly opening the floodgates to their ambitions for me, ambitions that had nothing to do with my own happiness or independence. They saw not a home, but a new stage for their traditional machinations. And my quiet life was about to get very, very loud. YOUC. My parents, Maria and Hector, are traditional Cuban Americans. And when I say traditional, I mean old world values steeped in a very specific idea of what a woman's life should look like. To them, marriage isn't just a life choice. It's practically a sacred duty, the ultimate achievement. My mom, Maria, especially, views being single at my age as some kind of personal failing, a stain on the family honor. Never mind that I'm 26, own my own home, and have a thriving career. In her eyes, I'm incomplete without a husband. Their obsession with my marital status created a constant, low hum of pressure in our family. Every holiday gathering, every casual phone call, inevitably circled back to the same topic. "Alina, when are you going to find a nice young man? All your cousins are married. Don't you want a family?" It was relentless. Thanksgiving dinners, which should have been about gratitude and good food, morphed into elaborate matchmaking circuses. My mother would parade eligible bachelors past me, whispering their education, their family connections, their supposed virtues. It was humiliating, but I developed a thick skin. I'd perfected the art of the polite smile, the non-committal answer, the strategic escape to the kitchen to help with dishes. I love my parents, truly. They provided for me, taught me strong values, and worked incredibly hard. But their love often felt conditional, tied to their expectations of me fitting into their predefined mold. My independence, my career, my desire to build my own life on my own terms, none of it seemed to register as success in their traditional scorecard. I tried to explain. I talked about my career goals, my travel aspirations, my desire to enjoy my youth and newfound financial freedom. They'd nod, seemingly listen, then pivot right back to comments like, "But who will take care of you when you're older?" Or, "A woman's greatest joy is her family." It was like speaking two different languages. I usually grinned and bore it, letting their words wash over me. I'd grown accustomed to the Alina needs a husband narrative. But then came the infamous Christmas dinner. It wasn't just the usual nudge. It was an orchestrated event, a full frontal assault on my single status, and the evening that lit the fuse for everything that followed. That night, they introduced me to someone they'd been grooming for a role I had no intention of filling. And that someone was Sebastian. I should have seen the signs then, the way their eyes gleamed with an almost predatory satisfaction. But I was still trying to be the dutiful daughter, blind to the true extent of their carefully laid plans each infamous Christmas dinner. The air was thick with the scent of pernil and my mother's unspoken expectations. I was braced for the usual matrimonial interrogation, but this year felt different. My mother, Maria, had a glint in her eye, a kind of satisfied cat with the cream look that immediately put me on edge. That's when he walked in. Enter Sebastian Rios. He was practically presented on a silver platter, a friend of my cousin's, which gave him an immediate, albeit superficial, veneer of family approval. From the moment he entered, he exuded a certain polished charm, the kind that feels a little too practiced. He had this carefully cultivated tech bro beard, just scruffy enough to seem artistic but groomed enough to be professional. He talked about his startup dreams with an almost evangelical fervor, name-dropping buzzwords and gesturing expansively, as if his ideas were too grand to be contained by mere words. And then there was that smirk, a subtle, self-satisfied curve of his lips that seemed to say, "I know something you don't know, and I'm already winning." My mom, bless her traditional heart, was practically salivating. Before he'd even finished his first story about disrupting an industry, her pronouncements began. Whispers to my aunts about how he's such a good, strong man, a provider, and pointed comments to me about his ambition and how he was clearly husband material. Every time he caught my eye, he'd offer that smirk, as if confirming my mother's silent endorsements. He was undeniably handsome in a cookie-cutter sort of way and superficially engaging, but something about him just rubbed me the wrong way. Too smooth, too self-assured, too performative. I tried to keep my distance, offering polite but brief replies to his questions. He seemed insistent on engaging, asking about my job, my house. I gave him the bare minimum, not wanting to encourage him. But even in those brief interactions, I could feel his gaze assessing me, not with genuine interest, but with a calculating air. Like he was adding me to a checklist. Little did I know, his presence at that dinner wasn't coincidental. It was strategic. My parents weren't just hinting that he was husband material. They were actively laying the groundwork for a far more elaborate and, frankly, sinister plan. The matchmaking circus had escalated. This wasn't just about finding me a husband. It was about installing a pre-selected heir, someone they believed would complete their vision for my life. They were already moving chess pieces, and I, unknowingly, was the queen. The Christmas cheer was just a smokescreen for the deception that was already underway, a deception that would soon invade the most sacred space I owned. My home, 2 weeks after Christmas dinner, passed in a blur of work and quiet satisfaction. I was feeling good, focusing on my career, and enjoying the space and peace of my own home. My parents' attempts at setting me up with Sebastian seemed to have quieted down, or so I thought. Apparently, their silence was less about acceptance and more about cover. Operations. I had a spontaneous, last-minute work trip come up, a 3-day conference that required me to fly out of Charlotte with barely 24 hours' notice. It was a whirlwind, productive, but exhausting. All I wanted was to get back to my sanctuary, my quiet home, and collapse on my own sofa. I pulled into my driveway, tired but content, only to be struck by a strange sense of unease. There was a car I didn't recognize, a sleek, dark sedan, parked a little too confidently in my spot. My heart started to thud. Had I forgotten a friend was visiting? No, that couldn't be right. I walked up to my front door, fumbling for my keys, and then I saw them. A pair of men's shoes, expensive-looking loafers, neatly placed by my welcome mat. Not my dad's, not a delivery person's. My blood ran cold. Pushing open the door, A wave of disorienting familiarity hit me, mixed with something utterly foreign. The living room looked slightly different, a throw pillow out of place, a newspaper I didn't buy on the coffee table. I walked down the hall towards my bedroom, my apprehension growing with every silent step. And then I saw it. The closet door was ajar, and hanging amongst my perfectly organized clothes were men's shirts, nicely ironed, expensive-looking shirts, and that telltale tech bro beard grooming kit on my bathroom counter. My mind raced. Was I being robbed? No, nothing seemed disturbed in that way. Everything was too domestic, too settled. Just then, my mother, Maria, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, a disturbingly serene smile on her face. Alina, you're home. We didn't expect you for another hour. Mom? What? What's going on? My voice was tight. I gestured vaguely at the unfamiliar items. Whose car is that? Whose things are these? Her smile didn't falter. Oh, that's just Sebastian, Hija. He's just staying here for a little while. She paused, her voice dripping with an almost saccharine sweetness. Until you two connect. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sebastian. In my house. Without my knowledge, without my permission. My parents had moved him in. My own home, the bastion of my independence, had been breached, transformed into their personal matchmaking headquarters. I felt the slow burn of fury ignite in my chest, a fire that would soon rage out of control. I don't connect with trespassers. I nearly imploded. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall of it, was breathtaking. This was no longer just about family pressure. This was a full-blown invasion. And they had no idea who they were dealing with. The initial shock of finding Sebastian in my house quickly gave way to a cold, simmering rage. But more infuriating than his mere presence was the way he immediately slipped into the role of man of the house. It was as if my parents had given him a script, and he was determined to play the part to perfection. He adjusted the thermostat without asking, claiming the house was stuffy. Excuse me, his house? He started reassigning rooms, casually remarking that the guest room would make a perfect home office for him. And then there was the morning I woke up to the smell of burnt toast and found him in my kitchen, in nothing but his boxers, attempting to cook breakfast. He looked up, offered that infuriating smirk, and said, "Morning, future wife. Thought I'd whip us up some fuel for the day." My kitchen. His boxers. My breakfast. It was all so utterly grotesque. What truly fueled my anger, though, was my parents' unwavering support of him every time I confronted them. Every time I voiced my outrage at this blatant disrespect, they would double down. My mom, Maria, would sigh dramatically. "Alina, you need to be more welcoming." He's practically family now. My dad, Hector, usually the more passive one, would timidly chime in, "Yes, Mija, a good wife makes her husband feel comfortable." Comfortable? I'd practically shrieked one evening. After Sebastian had rearranged my living room furniture to his liking, he's making himself at home in my home. My mom just waved her hand dismissively. It's his house too. Now, Alina, soon you'll be married, and it will be both of yours anyway. You need to learn to compromise. His house too now? The words echoed in my head. A jarring, infuriating refrain. They actually believed this charade. They had convinced themselves, and apparently Sebastian, that his mere presence had somehow granted him ownership, a squatter's rights to my hard-earned sanctuary. But what they, and Sebastian, completely, utterly, and disastrously forgot was one small, inconvenient detail, a detail that couldn't be argued away with traditional rhetoric or charming smirks. I own the deed exclusively 100%. In my name, my parents had meticulously orchestrated this entire invasive scheme. But they had overlooked the single most important document that defined ownership, the paper that held the truth. The key to reclaiming my life and my property. It was a mistake they would come to regret. Profoundly, because while they were busy playing house, I was about to remind them precisely who held the cards. My house, my rules, and Sebastian was about to learn that the hard the audacity of it all was truly breathtaking. The sheer entitlement, not just from Sebastian, but from my own parents, who were actively enabling his invasion. I decided to try, one last time, to appeal to their sense of logic, their familial love. "Sebastian needs to leave," I stated, my voice as calm as I could possibly make it. Despite the volcano erupting inside me, I was standing in my own living room, a space they had willfully compromised, facing them like a tenant pleading with landlords who didn't even own the property. My mother, Maria, immediately launched into her well-rehearsed tirade. Alina, how can you be so ungrateful? After all we do for you. This is what family does. We help each other, and you, being so selfish, pushing away. A good man like Sebastian. Her voice rose, laced with thinly veiled accusation. You'll regret this bitterness when you're alone at 40, a spinster with no one to care for you. The age-old threat, designed to inflict maximum emotional damage, the fear of being an unloved, lonely woman. It was a classic. My dad, Hector, chimed in, his voice softer, but no less infuriating in its passive enabling. Marriage, Mija, is about compromise. You must learn to share. Sebastian is a good catch. He looked at me with a pleading expression, as if I was the unreasonable one for wanting my own home to remain exclusively mine. And then there was Sebastian. He watched this whole exchange from the armchair he had claimed as his own, a smug, knowing smirk playing on his lips. As my parents piled on, he simply chuckled almost imperceptibly and called me difficult. Difficult. The man who had been moved into my house without my permission, who was acting like he owned the place, had the audacity to call me difficult. That one word, uttered with such casual contempt, was the straw that broke the camel's back. The gaslighting, the gatekeeping of my own life, reached a crescendo then. Difficult. No, I wasn't difficult. I was furious. And that smirking dismissal solidified something deep within me. This wasn't a conversation anymore. This wasn't a dispute to be resolved with words. This was war. The argument ended with me retreating to my room, slamming the door harder than I had intended. From the other side, I could hear my mother tutting, "See? So temperamental." They thought I was sulking. They thought their combined pressure had worked. They thought I would eventually relent, accept my future prince, and fall in line. But instead of sulking, I was planning. Every cutting remark, every dismissive gesture, every entitled action had cemented my resolve. They wanted to play games with my life, my home, my future. Fine. But they were about to learn that I played for keeps. And my game was about to be much more strategic and far more devastating than anything they could possibly imagine. That night, sleep didn't come easily. But when it did, it was filled with visions of justice. They thought I was sulking. They saw me retreating to my room, closing the door, and interpreted it as resignation, a sign that their relentless pressure combined with Sebastian's infuriating presence had finally broken me. Oh, how wrong they were. That closed door wasn't a sign of surrender. It was a fortress, a command center from which I would launch my retaliation. On the surface, I played the part of the wounded, difficult daughter. I kept to myself, ate meals separately, and responded with clipped politeness when addressed. Sebastian, clearly relishing his perceived victory, continued to sprawl, to occupy, to demand. My parents, reinforced by his complacency, continued their campaign of subtle manipulation and veiled insults. They had no idea that beneath this quiet facade, a storm was gathering, meticulously calculated and cold. The very next morning, I made my first move. I called Sam, my lawyer. Sam is a no-nonsense professional with a dry wit and an impressive grasp of property law. I laid out the entire situation, concisely detailing how my parents had orchestrated Sebastian's unauthorized residency in my house. Sam listened, asked precise questions, and then, without missing a beat, outlined my options. The first order of business: securing my domicile. I authorized him to change the locks immediately, setting it up so the new keys would only be accessible to me. No more spare keys floating around, no more unauthorized entry. Next, I turned my attention to technology. My house already had a robust security system, but I enhanced it. I didn't just want an alarm. I wanted to know every single movement within my property. I rigged the cameras and motion sensors to notify me directly, in real time, whenever someone stepped inside. Every time Sebastian went to the kitchen for a snack, every time he entered a room, I'd get an alert. It was like having eyes and ears everywhere, turning my sanctuary into a surveillance hub, and my unwanted guest into an unwitting performer in his own eviction saga. I stopped confronting them. I stopped arguing. I stopped explaining myself. This new Alina was silent, methodical, and utterly determined. They interpreted my silence as acceptance, my lack of protest as defeat. They didn't see the spreadsheets in my hidden browser tabs, the legal documents being quietly prepared, the mounting evidence. They didn't hear the mental click of a trap being set. On the outside, I was docile. On the inside, I was preparing my nuclear move. Every smirk from Sebastian, every sigh from my mother, every resigned glance from my father was simply adding fuel to a fire that was about to burn their illusions to ashes, while my parents and Sebastian remained oblivious, reveling in their perceived control. I was busy constructing my airtight case. My strategy was clear. I needed undeniable proof, evidence so damning that it would leave no room for questions or gaslighting. This wasn't just about getting Sebastian out of my house. It was about exposing the full extent of the manipulation and betrayal. My phone became my most potent weapon. I meticulously scrolled through months of text messages. There were texts from my mom, Maria, dating back to before I even left for my work trip, where she explicitly discussed logistics with me about moving some boxes into my house while I was away. Innocent enough, on their own. But then came the more incriminating ones. Sent after I confronted her about Sebastian, messages stating, "He's just helping you out, Alina, and it's a temporary arrangement until you get to know him better." Clear documentation that she not only allowed him in but orchestrated his presence. Then I dug deeper. I found emails between my mom and dad, Hector, discussing Operation Future, son-in-law. They talked about helping Sebastian win Alina over, referencing my home as the ideal cohabitation experiment. Yes, they actually used that phrase. The level of premeditation sent a fresh wave of disgust through me, but also a fierce satisfaction. This was gold. But the most damning evidence came from Sebastian himself. Thanks to the security system I'd rigged, I had not only visual confirmation of his movements, but audio too. I remembered one particular instance, Sebastian on a video call with a friend, laughing conspiratorially. "Yeah, man, I'm practically set up," he boasted. "Her parents are spoon-feeding her to me. Said I could just crash here until she warms up. Honestly, they're practically giving me the house. Just gotta seal the deal with Miss Independent over here." He chuckled then, a chilling, cynical sound. Free rent, free food, and maybe a whole house in the end. Can't beat that, right? Talk about inheriting a good situation. Inheriting the house. Those words, chilling in their blatant opportunism, were crystal clear. I recorded that conversation and several others like it, where he openly discussed his intentions and his parents' complicity. Each recording was a nail in his coffin, and in my parents' elaborate pretense. I built a digital archive, screenshots of messages, printed emails, and audio files. Mountains of proof. Each piece carefully categorized, time-stamped, and backed up. This wasn't some petty family squabble. This was a calculated invasion, a contractual breach of privacy, and a blatant attempt at manipulation. The storm was gathering, and I had all the lightning. They had no idea the full weight of the evidence I held, and when I unleashed it, their world was going to come crashing down. I waited for the perfect moment. Not just any moment, but the moment. A moment that would maximize impact, ensure witnesses, and leave absolutely no room for doubt or denial. That moment presented itself in the form of my dad's annual birthday party. And ironically, beautifully, it was scheduled to be held at my house. The house was bustling. The aroma of my mother's cooking, for once, didn't fill me with dread. The dining room table was laden with food. My extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, even some friends filled every room. Sebastian, of course, was playing the gracious host, charming my aunts, helping my dad with the grill. He was completely oblivious, basking in the glow of what he believed was his impending triumph. My parents were likewise beaming, enjoying the fruits of their carefully laid plans. I let the festivities unfold for a while. Let everyone eat, drink, be merry. Let the illusion of normalcy settle firmly into place. And then, as my dad was about to cut his birthday cake, I made my move. I cleared my throat, not loudly, but with enough firmness to draw attention. The chatter died down. All eyes turned to me. I walked over to the buffet table, where I had discreetly placed a leather portfolio earlier. My hands, though steady, held the weight of months of quiet preparation. I pulled out a framed document, crisp and official. Before we cut the cake, I began, my voice clear and calm, cutting through the festive atmosphere. I have a small present for my dad. And for everyone here, really. I held up the document. This, for those who can't see, is the deed to this house. Purchased on date of purchase in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as you can plainly see, the sole owner, 100% exclusively, is Alina Santana. My finger tapped my name, printed boldly on the document. Gasps rippled through the room. My mother's face went ashen. My father coughed, suddenly very interested in the ceiling. Sebastian's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment. Now, I continued, my gaze sweeping the room, lingering on Sebastian, I want to share some other gifts. I pressed play on a small Bluetooth speaker I'd connected to my phone. The room filled with the hushed, yet perfectly audible voices of my mother and father. He's just helping you out, Alina. It's a temporary arrangement until you get to know him better. Then, the clincher, Sebastian's own voice, clear as a bell. Her parents are spoon-feeding her to me. Free rent, free food, and maybe a whole house in the end. Talk about inheriting a good situation. Laughter. His mocking, self-satisfied laughter. The silence that followed was deafening. My family stared, disbelief warring with dawning comprehension. My mother looked like she'd seen a ghost. My father's jaw hung slack. Sebastian was shocked, frozen in place, his face draining of color. I turned to him, my voice colder than I knew it could be. This man, I stated, gesturing to Sebastian, was never my guest. He was moved into my home under false pretenses with the clear intention of manipulating me and potentially claiming what does not belong to him. My eyes hardened. As of now, he is trespassing. The bomb had dropped. And the fallout was just beginning. The silence in the room was electric, thick with shock and dawning horror. My family, who moments before were enjoying Dad's birthday celebrations, were now staring at Sebastian, then at my parents, then back at me, calculating the incredible deception that had just been exposed. Sebastian, usually so composed, was white as a sheet, his jaw slack. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, utterly devoid of his usual charm. I hadn't planned for a big, theatrical scene just for the sake of drama. I did it for accountability, for clarity, and for swift, undeniable action. Given the evidence you've all just heard and seen, I stated, my voice cutting through the stunned silence, and given that this individual has no legal right to be here, I'm formally asking him to vacate my property. Within the hour. Sebastian finally found his voice, a pathetic whine. Alina, come on. This is crazy. You're overreacting. Your parents invited me. This is just a big misunderstanding. He even tried to summon tears, squeezing his eyes, but no moisture appeared. A truly terrible performance. My mother, Maria, stirred, looking caught between her ingrained need to defend her plan and the undeniable truth now laid bare. She opened her mouth, perhaps to gaslight me again, but my gaze was firm, unwavering. She saw the steely resolve in my eyes, the cold, hard logic of the facts, and thought better of it. There is no misunderstanding, I continued, my voice betraying no emotion. This is trespassing. And for anyone who thinks I'm being unreasonable, please understand that my lawyer has been fully apprised of the situation, and the police are on standby should this amicable departure become anything less than peaceful. That last part hit home. The mention of my lawyer and the police was not a threat, but a statement of fact, a testament to how seriously I was taking this invasion. It was the legal hammer descending. My cousin Lucia, bless her, looked at her friend Sebastian with dawning disgust. Aunt Teresa, ever the dramatist, simply gasped and clutched her chest, but I saw a flicker of admiration in her eyes. I walked over to Sebastian, who was still slumped in the armchair, bewildered. I held out a standard-sized moving box. Your belongings are packed. They're by the front door. I suggest you take them and go. My hand gestured towards the exit. Now, he scrambled, suddenly realizing the gravity of the situation. The confident charmer was gone, replaced by a desperate, humiliated man. He mumbled something unintelligible, grabbed the box, and practically ran out the front door, retrieved his car keys from my entryway table, and sped out of my driveway with a screech of tires. Another silence descended, different this time. Less shocked, more reflective. My silence was ice, a deliberate barrier. My parents? They were silent too, their faces a mixture of shame, defeat, and perhaps, for the first time, a glimmer of understanding about the depth of my resolve. They didn't apologize, not then. But the elaborate, manipulative fantasy they had constructed lay in shattered pieces around their feet. For now, that was enough. The immediate aftermath of Sebastian's hasty departure was a strange blend of stunned silence and suppressed chaos. My dad's birthday party effectively ended right there. The laughter died, the music stopped, and a palpable tension filled the air. My parents, Maria and Hector, didn't utter a word to me that night. They simply gathered their things and left, their faces etched with a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and perhaps a touch of fear. For the next 3 months, my mother didn't speak to me. Not a single word. Her silence was a heavy, suffocating blanket designed to make me feel isolated and guilty. My dad, less confrontation-averse but clearly under my mom's influence, resorted to passive-aggressive texts. "Hope you're enjoying your independence," read one, followed by a sad face emoji. Another said, "Family is important, Alina. Sometimes sacrifices must be made." I simply deleted them, unmoved. I had made my sacrifice. I had sacrificed my peace for months. Of course, family gossip spread like wildfire. Aunt Teresa, true to form, was probably fueling half of it, but with champagne in hand and a glint in her eye, now firmly on Team Alina. Some cousins, those who had always been more aligned with my parents' traditional views, messaged me or called, saying I had gone too far. "He was just trying to get to know you," one cousin argued, completely missing the point. "You humiliated abuela and abuelo," another accused, as if their feelings trumped my right to autonomy and safety in my own home. But then there were the others. My cousin Lucia, who had always been supportive, called me a hero. She admitted she'd seen Sebastian's true colors long ago and was just waiting for him to expose himself. Several distant relatives, women mostly, sent me private messages of solidarity, sharing their own stories of family pressure and controlling parents. It felt like a quiet, underground network of defiance. One aunt, a stern woman I barely knew, even called me directly and, after a long sigh, asked if I could help her draft some paperwork to finally get her freeloading ex-husband out of her basement. It seemed my nuclear move had inspired others. The family drama was an expected, if tiresome, consequence. It was the price of setting boundaries, of asserting my independence in a family that valued conformity. I let the gossip churn, the passive aggression fester. My focus wasn't on mending fences with those who couldn't understand. It was on reclaiming my space, physically and emotionally. The house, once tainted by the invasion, was mine again. And after 3 months of silence, I realized something profound. Their anger, their disapproval, no longer held the power it once did. The fear of being alone at 40? It sounded a lot better than being trapped in a life chosen for me. After the dust settled and Sebastian, along with the immediate, chilling silence from my parents, had cleared, I decided it was time for a literal and metaphorical fresh start. My house, my sanctuary, had been violated, and I needed to cleanse it, to truly make it mine again, free from the lingering shadow of unwanted guests and manipulative schemes. I threw myself into a full-scale home renovation project. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was therapy. I repainted the living room walls a vibrant shade of cerulean I'd always loved but never dared to use. I ripped out the old, dull carpet and installed sleek, dark wood floors that gleamed. The kitchen, where Sebastian had once paraded in his boxers, was completely redone with new countertops and appliances, transforming it into a bright, inviting space. Every nail hammered, every brushstroke was a deliberate act of reclaiming, of solidifying my ownership and my peace. And yes, I changed all the low CKS again. Not just the authorization, but the actual physical locks and smart home system codes, creating a complete barrier against any future, unwelcome intrusions. This time, there would be no question of access, no possibility of a repeat performance. Then, to celebrate the rebirth of my home and my liberation, I did something I'd always wanted to do. I threw a deed party. It wasn't a huge family affair. It was an intimate gathering of my closest friends, the true allies who had supported me, listened patiently to my rants, and cheered me on. We popped open champagne, ate delicious cake, and in a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph, I ceremoniously hung the framed deed to my house in the most prominent spot in the hallway. It was a golden frame, shimmering under the new light fixtures, a permanent reminder of whose house this truly was. The glow-up wasn't just about the house. It was about me. The experience, jarring and painful as it was, had forced me to confront deeply ingrained family dynamics and assert my own boundaries in a way I never had before. I started dating again, but this time it was entirely on my terms. There was no pressure, no expectation, just genuine connection. And when I did bring someone new over to my beautifully renovated house, there was an unspoken understanding, a quiet confidence I now exuded. They knew exactly whose house it was. It wasn't just a physical space. It was a testament to my resilience, my strength, and my unwavering belief in my own worth. This house wasn't just built with my hard work. It was rebuilt with my unwavering spirit. Months passed. The initial shockwaves through my family subsided, replaced by an uneasy truce. My mother eventually broke her 3-month silence timidly with a casserole. Life continued, but it was irrevocably changed. I had defined my boundaries in a way that left no room for misinterpretation, and everyone felt it. The final scene, the true culmination of this saga, arrived unexpectedly. My mother, Maria, came over one afternoon. Not for a holiday, not with a passive-aggressive text as a precursor. She just came. We sat in my renovated living room, a space that now truly felt like mine, without the lingering shadows of past intrusions. The framed deed gleamed subtly from the hallway. She cleared her throat, a nervous gesture I hadn't seen from her in years. "Alina," she began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I was wrong." The words hung in the air, weighted with years of expectation, of control, of her unwavering certainty in her own narrative. I didn't respond immediately. I just watched her, allowing her to sit with the discomfort, with the enormity of that admission. She continued, I thought I was helping you, that I knew what was best. I didn't see how much I hurt you, how much I disrespected you and everything you've built." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw not just shame, but genuine remorse. I was wrong to move Sebastian in. I was wrong to pressure you. Wrong to try and live my dreams through your life. I was just wrong. It was an apology, a real one, raw and unprompted. And you know what? I didn't need the apology. Not anymore. The moment she had tried to gaslight me, the moment Sebastian had called me difficult, the moment I had resolved to reclaim my space and my autonomy, I had let go of the need for their validation, their approval. I hadn't orchestrated D-Day for an apology. I had done it for justice, for truth, for self-preservation. What I needed, what I truly craved, was respect. Respect for my choices, for my independence, for my ownership of my life and my property. And in that quiet, vulnerable moment, as she sat across from me in the home I had built, in the space I had reclaimed, she finally gave it to me. Her admission, her softened gaze, the quiet acceptance of my boundaries, that was the true victory. It wasn't about winning an argument or exacting revenge. It was about establishing my sovereignty. The lesson was burned into stone, for all of us. My parents learned that their traditional ways could not dictate my modern life, not when it came at the cost of my peace and my property. Sebastian learned that manipulation rarely pays off, especially when facing someone who holds all the real power. And I learned that standing firm, even against those you love, is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And now, I finally have both. My peace and their respect.